Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, folks, deep into the world of oil and gas in 2024.
Sounds exciting.
It is. We've got these excerpts from a report called Compliance to Competitiveness.
Okay.
And it's all about how this industry, one that's been around forever, is using some seriously cutting-edge innovation.
To adapt.
Yeah, adapt to this future that's so focused on sustainability and decarbonization. It makes you wonder, can an industry known for, like, traditional energy sources really make that kind of shift?
That's the question, isn't it? And what's interesting is this report, it highlights the tension between holding on to what they know, the tradition, and embracing these totally new ways of doing things.
Exactly. And one thing that surprised me was the role of AI.
AI.
Yeah, artificial intelligence. It's transforming the oil and gas sector in ways I never even thought about.
Interesting. So how?
Well, it's being used for everything, from optimizing drilling to, like, predicting equipment failures.
Wow.
And the potential for efficiency gains is huge.
I bet.
For example, the report talks about ExxonMobil. They're using AI systems to analyze real-time data from their drilling.
So they can adjust things as they go.
Exactly. Improves efficiency and reduces downtime.
Smart.
And get this, Shell is using machine learning to predict equipment failures.
Before they happen.
Yeah, it's a huge step forward for safety. And it prevents those costly shutdowns.
Makes sense. So AI is really changing things.
It is. But let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk sustainability.
Okay.
It might seem counterintuitive, but these companies are actually making big efforts to be more environmentally friendly.
Really?
Yeah. The report highlights some of these efforts. BP, for instance. They've set a target to reduce their carbon intensity by 50% by 2050.
That's a huge commitment.
It is. But how can they track and verify something like that across their entire operation? It's global.
Well, that's where blockchain comes in.
Blockchain.
Yeah. The report explains how they're using it to track and verify the environmental impact of their products throughout the entire supply chain. Extraction, refining, all of it.
So that's how they prove their commitment to sustainability, not just to customers, but to investors too.
Exactly. It's one example of how the industry is using technology to address some of the challenges they face.
So we've got AI boosting efficiency and blockchain ensuring transparency. But what are the big players actually doing in 2024? What are their big moves?
Well, ExxonMobil made a splash in October. They acquired Pioneer Natural Resources for a whopping $60 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. The biggest deal in their history. It gives them a much bigger presence in the Permian Basin. That's a major oil and gas producing region in the U.S.
So they're sticking with traditional energy then?
It seems that way, but there's more to it. ExxonMobil also committed to net zero emissions in their Permian operations by 2030.
So they're trying to do both, traditional energy and reduce their impact.
Exactly, balancing their investments. It's a bold move. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. So ExxonMobil is making waves in the Permian. What about Chevron? What are they up to?
Chevron is all about AI, using it for efficiency gains. They partnered with Microsoft Azure, and it's been a game changer, according to the report.
Okay. How so?
Well, just in the third quarter of 2024, they announced a 15% reduction in drilling costs across their Gulf of Mexico operations.
15%? That's huge. How are they doing that?
The report goes into detail about how they're using AI to optimize their drilling.
Interesting.
And it's not just drilling. Their well planning process is 30% faster now. Plus, they're estimating annual savings of $50 million because of predictive maintenance.
Wow, so they're really seeing the benefits of AI.
Definitely. These AI-driven efficiencies are a big reason why their earnings are so strong. Even with all the market volatility, their profits are up 8% year over year, just from the third quarter.
Now, what about Shell? What are they doing?
Shell hit a major milestone in their renewable energy strategy.
Ooh.
Yeah. They passed 10 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity in August.
It's impressive.
It's double what they had just 2 years ago. And they're not just dabbling. They're investing in a whole range of projects. Offshore wind farms in the North Sea, solar projects in Texas.
I read about their green hydrogen project in Australia.
Right. Shell is clearly diversifying, getting ready for a future that's less reliant on fossil fuels.
So we've got these industry giants making big moves. But what about the bigger picture? What global trends are influencing oil and gas in 2024?
Well, one trend is the surge in demand for natural gas.
Natural gas.
Yeah. The International Energy Agency reported a 3.2% increase in global demand just in the first 3 quarters of 2024. Way more than they projected.
Wow. Why such a big increase?
A few reasons, actually. Colder winters in Europe and Asia, so more demand for heating. And there's a rebound in industrial activity in those emerging markets, which also needs natural gas. And of course, natural gas prices are much lower than they were during that energy crisis back in 2022.
So it's a perfect storm.
You could say that. And the report highlights how this is affecting LNG exports. Liquefied natural gas.
Yeah.
It's natural gas cooled down to a liquid so it can be transported. And this demand for natural gas has led to a boom in LNG exports, especially from the U.S.
Interesting. So the U.S. is a major player in that market now.
They are. It's a big shift in the energy landscape.
Okay, so natural gas is on the rise. But we can't talk about oil and gas without talking about oil prices. They've been pretty volatile this year, haven't they?
Oh, they have. Brent crude, the benchmark for oil prices, has been averaging around $85 per barrel, but with a lot of ups and downs.
And the report says OPEC Plus decisions are a big factor in that volatility.
Right. OPEC Plus is that group of oil-producing countries. They coordinate to try to influence global prices.
Right. I remember.
Well, their decisions have a huge impact on the market.
Like that recent decision by Saudi Arabia and Russia to extend their production cuts.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia extended their cut of 1 million barrels per day through the end of the year, and Russia reduced their exports by 300,000 barrels per day. They're trying to keep prices up.
But I also read about increased production from the U.S., Brazil, and Guyana.
That's right. So it's a bit of a balancing act. Lots of factors at play.
It sounds like it. So we've got AI, sustainability, industry giants, market dynamics, oil prices.
Huh.
What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Which is?
Decarbonization. How can oil and gas companies keep operating in a world that's so focused on reducing emissions?
It's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and the report acknowledges that, but it also highlights some of the ways the industry is responding.
Like what?
One area is investment in carbon capture and storage, or CCS. It's a technology that captures those CO2 emissions from industrial processes and stores them underground, keeps them out of the atmosphere.
So they're like trapping the emissions.
Exactly. The report mentions some big CCS projects that are already happening. BP and Equinor have that Northern Lights project in Norway. They're capturing 1.5 million tons of CO2 every year.
Wow. And what about Occidental Petroleum?
They have a direct air capture facility in Texas. That one is removing 1 million tons of CO2 from the atmosphere each year.
Those are some impressive projects. But is it enough to really make a difference?
They're a good start. But we need a lot more investment in CCS if we're serious about our climate goals.
Okay, so CCS is one piece of the puzzle. What else is being done to decarbonize?
Well, green hydrogen is emerging as a promising solution.
Green hydrogen.
It's a clean fuel made from renewable energy sources. It can power anything: cars, trucks, homes, businesses.
The report mentioned that a lot of these companies are focusing on green hydrogen, investing in research, partnering with other companies to build the infrastructure needed.
It's still early days, but the potential is huge.
The report also mentioned that green hydrogen is expensive to produce.
That's the challenge, making it more affordable so it can compete with traditional fuels. Governments and industry are working on that, though. Tax credits, subsidies, research funding.
So it sounds like we're at the beginning of the hydrogen economy.
We are, but it has the potential to really change how we power the world. Think about it. It could be used for everything, even airplanes and ships. It could generate electricity and heat our homes. The possibilities are exciting.
So oil and gas companies are facing these big challenges, but it sounds like there are some amazing opportunities too.
There are. This energy transition is complex for sure, but it also gives the oil and gas industry a chance to reinvent themselves, to be leaders in building a sustainable future. The question is, will they seize that chance?
That's the question, isn't it? It'll be interesting to see how things play out. But for now, let's shift our focus a little. Let's think about the people involved in all of this.
Good point. It's easy to get lost in the technology and the markets, but ultimately, the energy transition is about people.
It's about the workers whose jobs are tied to oil and gas. It's about the communities affected by energy production. And it's about all of us who rely on energy.
Exactly. We have to ensure this transition is fair to everyone. That means supporting workers who might lose their jobs and making sure that communities aren't left behind as the industry changes.
And it means making sure everyone has access to affordable energy no matter where they live or how much they make.
Absolutely. This transition can't just be about reducing emissions. It's about creating a better future for everyone.
Well said. This has been really insightful. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more thing I want to touch on.
Okay, what's that?
Geopolitics. This global energy landscape is so connected to international relations. And this energy transition is just going to make things even more complex.
You're absolutely right. We're already seeing it. The energy transition is reshaping alliances and creating new points of tension.
Like the competition for those critical minerals, right?
Exactly. Those minerals are essential for all those clean energy technologies. And then there's the question of energy security. As countries move away from fossil fuels, they need to find new sources of energy that are reliable and affordable.
Which could lead to more competition and even conflict.
Exactly. It's a complex and constantly changing situation.
It sounds like it. So it seems like the oil and gas industry is at a crossroads. The decisions made today will have a huge impact, not just on energy, but on the whole planet. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I think it's given us all a lot to think about. But before we go,
Yes.
I want to hear from you, the listener. What are your thoughts on the future of oil and gas?
Yeah.
Can this industry really make the transition to a cleaner future? And what role do you think you can play in all of this? We'll be back in the next part of our deep dive to explore these questions and more, so stay tuned.
It really is fascinating, to see all these forces pushing and pulling. On one hand, everyone wants cleaner energy, but the demand for oil and gas, it's still strong.
It's like we're trying to walk in two directions at the same time. We know we need to change to become more sustainable, but we're so dependent on oil and gas.
Exactly. And that tension plays out in politics, too. Governments are setting these big goals for reducing emissions, but they also have to worry about keeping energy affordable, making sure people have what they need.
It's a tough balancing act, for sure. And then you've got the companies themselves. They're trying to figure out this transition while still making money, staying competitive. It can't be easy to change an industry this big.
You're right. But they're realizing that they have to adapt to change or they might not survive. This report, it emphasizes how investors are looking for companies that are doing good, environmentally and socially. And consumers are paying more attention too. They want to make sure their choices are making a difference.
So what does this mean for the future of oil and gas? Are they going to disappear? Or can they change, reinvent themselves for this low-carbon world?
It's probably not going to be one or the other. I think what we'll see is a transition period. Oil and gas will still be around, but their role will get smaller as those cleaner alternatives become more affordable and reliable.
So it's not about shutting everything down immediately. It's about managing a gradual shift, a decline, while those alternatives are growing and getting stronger.
Exactly. And that's why innovation is so important. The report really highlights that. We need new ways to get and use oil and gas more sustainably. And we need to invest in research and development for those cleaner technologies.
It sounds like a huge opportunity for these companies. They can be part of the solution instead of holding on to the old ways.
Absolutely. They have the knowledge, the infrastructure, the money to make a real difference. And they're starting to see that their future depends on it.
So what does this transition look like in reality? What are these companies doing specifically to decarbonize, besides those CCS projects we talked about?
Well, one interesting area the report talks about is low-carbon fuels, fuels that are produced with much lower emissions than traditional fossil fuels.
Like biofuels.
Biofuels are part of it, yeah, but there are other options too. Some companies are working on renewable natural gas made from organic waste. Others are investing in hydrogen. That can be a clean fuel for transportation and industry.
Speaking of hydrogen, you mentioned green hydrogen earlier. I keep hearing about other colors of hydrogen, though. What's the difference?
It's all about how it's produced. Green hydrogen, like we said, is made from renewables, so it's the cleanest. Then there's blue hydrogen, made from natural gas, but the carbon emissions are captured and stored underground, so it's considered lower emission. And then there's gray hydrogen, made from natural gas without that carbon capture, so it's the most carbon intensive.
So green hydrogen is the best, but the report said it's the most expensive to produce right now.
Yeah, that's the big hurdle. We need to bring that cost down to make it competitive. Governments and industries are working on it, though. There are tax credits, subsidies, research funding.
It sounds like we're just at the beginning of this hydrogen economy.
We are, but it has so much potential to change how we power the world. It could be used for everything. Cars, trucks, planes, ships. It could even generate electricity and heat our homes. It's pretty exciting to think about.
So while there are challenges, there are also some incredible opportunities.
Absolutely. This energy transition, it's complex, no doubt. But it's also a chance for oil and gas companies to reinvent themselves, to be leaders in this sustainable future. The question is, will they?
That's a big question,
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But for now, let's bring it back to the human side of all of this.
That's important. It's easy to focus on the technology and the trends, but we can't forget about the people involved in this transition.
We're talking about the workers, the communities, everyone who depends on energy.
We need to make sure this transition is fair to everyone. That means supporting workers who might lose their jobs and making sure that communities aren't left behind as the industry changes.
And making sure everyone has access to affordable energy, no matter where they live or how much they make.
Exactly. This transition can't just be about reducing emissions. It has to be about creating a better future for everyone.
That's a really important point. This conversation has been so insightful. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more topic I want to bring up:
What's that?
geopolitics. The global energy landscape is so tied to international relations. And this energy transition is just going to make things even more complex.
You're right. It's already happening. The energy transition is changing alliances and creating new points of tension.
Like the competition for critical minerals, right? Those minerals are essential for clean energy technologies, and everyone wants them.
And then there's energy security. As countries transition away from fossil fuels, they have to find new, reliable, and affordable sources.
Which could lead to more competition and even conflict.
Exactly. It's a complicated and constantly changing situation. It sounds like it. So it seems like the oil and gas industry is at a crossroads. The decisions made today will have a huge impact, not just on energy, but on the whole planet. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I think it's given us all a lot to think about. But I want to hear from you, the listener. What are your thoughts on this transition? What stood out to you the most from what we discussed?
What questions has this deep dive sparked for you? We'll be back in the next part to delve deeper into the potential impacts of these changes and explore what it all means for your future.
It's been fascinating to see how we talk about energy now. It's not just about, keeping the lights on anymore. It's so much bigger than that.
Right, it's not just about economics anymore, is it? Now we're thinking about the environment, the social costs, the whole picture. The report even talks about a just transition.
Yeah, we touched on that a little earlier, making this transition to cleaner energy fair for everyone. But I think it's worth digging into a bit more. What does a just transition actually look like for the energy industry? Well, it's about making sure no one gets left behind as we shift to cleaner energy. It means supporting workers who might lose their jobs in the oil and gas industry and helping communities that rely on fossil fuels to find new ways to thrive.
So helping those workers find new opportunities in the clean energy sector, making sure they're not left out.
Exactly. And it's about making sure the benefits of this transition are shared fairly so certain communities aren't stuck with all the costs while others reap the rewards.
It's a complex problem, but the report really emphasizes how important this is. Bringing everyone along, making sure no one is left behind. That's what will make this energy transition successful.
Absolutely. It's about creating a future where everyone has access to affordable, reliable, and clean energy, no matter where they live, no matter their background.
So we've talked about the global trends, the technology, the big picture. But what about you, the listener? What can you do to make a difference in this energy transition?
That's a great question. The report actually talks about that too. And I think the first step is just becoming more aware. Learn about where your energy comes from, how it's produced, and what the impact is on the environment and society.
It's true. Knowledge is power. Once you understand the issues, you can start making better choices in your own life.
Exactly. Think about how you get around. Could you walk or bike more? Take public transport? Carpool? Could you drive a more fuel-efficient car? Even small changes can add up.
And what about at home? Are there ways to use less energy? Energy-efficient appliances, LED light bulbs? Even just turning off lights when you leave a room can help.
Right. They might seem like small things, but when everyone does them, it makes a difference. And don't forget about your voice. Support policies that encourage clean energy and let your elected officials know that you care about climate change.
And think about the businesses you support. Choose the ones that are trying to be sustainable. Make conscious choices about what you buy, where you invest your money. Every choice sends a message.
That's right. This energy transition is something we all have to do together. We all have a part to play. And every little thing we do can help create a more sustainable future.
This has been such a fascinating look into the world of oil and gas. We've seen how this industry is changing, how it's balancing its history with the need to innovate, how it's figuring out how to be part of this energy transition.
We've learned about AI, blockchain, carbon capture, green hydrogen. We've talked about how the push for decarbonization is impacting everything, from regulations to global politics.
It's a complex and constantly changing world, that's for sure. But it's clear that the choices we make today are going to have a big impact on the future of energy and the future of our planet.
This report really does a great job of laying out the key trends and the challenges and opportunities. It gives us so much to think about.
I think so too. And I hope this deep dive has helped you understand these issues better. And maybe it's even inspired you to think about your own role in this energy transition.
As we move forward, the most important thing is to stay informed, keep talking about these issues, and make choices that support the kind of future we want. We have the power to create a more sustainable energy future together.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.